I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moment of silence. All right, thank you. Starting off with the citizen concerns. Any items not on the agenda that a citizen concerned is about? All right, seeing none, moving on to the approval of the agenda. I will move that.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The agenda is approved. Moving on to the consent agenda. Items 5 through 9 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 5, approval of the minutes of the January 15th, 2019 meeting. Item 6, approval of claims. Item 7 from Human Resources. A, approval of memorandum of personnel transactions. B, approval of request to deauthorize county positions. C, authorization to initiate hiring process. D, approval of the agreement and release. All right, 1 second here. I'm going to get my agenda come up here. Item 8, Community Economic Development Director David Gleiser. A, approval of amendment of the service agreement with Simmering Corey for comprehensive plan services. B, authorized Community Economic Development Director to sign the Community Venture Network Agreement. And item 9 from Jeremy, the approval of LEC Expansion Committee form. Any questions on the consent agenda? I know I had one, but 1 second, I got to find it. So on our Clerk 2 transfer from wage plan to ASME.
Ms. Thomas.
So
I discovered through the union and through ASME that all Clerk 2s, except when confidentiality comes into play, are covered under the collective bargaining agreement. So that's why we're moving her basically just in the system.
what about if that were potentially moved to a Clerk 3?
It would have to, it's going to have to go through the union for that to occur, and then obviously for the supervisors to approve that. So, I mean, there's still a lot of work to be done on that situation.
Do we just automatically approve any change from wage plan to ASME every time it's requested?
Well, this isn't, when it is covered under the collective bargaining unit. She is covered under the collective bargaining unit.
It was a clerical error.
Okay.
It has been, actually, as I'm fixing something that's been a clerical error for a while.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second. So motion by DeWitt, second by Raddick. Any other questions on the consent agenda? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That passes 5-0. Moving on to item 10, Williams and Company, Jeff Peters. Discuss and receive Woodbury County Certified Annual Financial Report for FY18.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
You should have a copy of the June 30, 2018 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report in front of you. Before we get too far, I'd like to introduce Chad Renier. Chad is the manager on this job for us. Chad's been doing this for, what, 7 or 8 years? So he's kind of the day-to-day guy. One of these days, I'm going to let him stand up here and talk. But the report's put together exactly like it's been done in the past, and it has been submitted to the Government Finance Officers Association for participation in their Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting program. We've had that, or the county has been recognized for that, I believe, pushing 20 years now. something like that. So it's a prestigious award. I'm guessing there's 30 in the state of Iowa, between counties and cities and schools that get it. It takes a significant amount of time, and it's a pretty good commitment to gather all the information. But there's a lot of pretty good trend information in here, and it's, as the title says, it's very comprehensive. The first part of it is the introductory section. Includes a transmittal letter, copy of the organizational chart, and just some general information. Beginning on page 14 in the financial section, you'll find the independent auditor's report. The third paragraph down under auditor's responsibilities, we are responsible for opining on the fair presentation of these financial statements in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, government auditing standards, and the uniform guidance. Those are the rules that we have to follow as auditors. Each one of those just adds additional reporting requirements and additional things that we have to look at related to completing the audit. If you flip to page 15, the top paragraph, it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position and the results of operations of the county. It's an unmodified opinion, meaning we feel the numbers are fairly stated. So that's what you're after. The next few pages, management's discussion and analysis, gives the staff an opportunity in narrative form to kind of compare 2018 to 2017. Decent little read if that's, if you don't have time to go through a 125-page report, that's not a bad place to take a look at stuff. 25, 26, and 27 take all the operations of the county and basically put them into one column, the governmental activities. So you can compare yourself to other counties, but you really can't make management decisions from that just because it combines your secondary roads and rural services and general fund and throws it all together into one set of numbers. On 26 and 27, that statement of activities, again done on the government-wide basis, where we basically put everything together, gives you a pretty good overview. For instance, and I always pick on public safety because it's the first column, or the first line on here, but if you look at the public safety and legal services number, we expended countywide $17 million in expenses. We collected about $2.2 million in revenue, either grants or charges for services, leaving a net cost of the government, or for the county to provide public safety and legal services of $14.8 million. That's how you read this on all cases. That net cost, about halfway down the page on 27, is $31,225,000, meaning that's cost us that much more than we took in specific revenues. Those costs then are paid for by general revenues, which are primarily property taxes and state tax credits, leaving a change in net position of about $7.8 million. The reason that number looks so much higher than your general fund balances is on this basis of accounting, we capitalize equipment and call that an asset. On the fund level statements, you call that an expense. So that's the primary difference. And then debt service expenditures and issuing debt is the same thing. I think in the meat of the report starts on page 28 and 29 with the major fund balances, or balance sheet. So you can see the major funds, the 6 major funds across there, and then all of the other individual funds are presented as that second to last column on page 29, called other governmental funds. They're presented individually at the back of the report. But the real question is, how did you do? If you turn to page 31 and 32, third line from the bottom, you can see your general fund had an increase in fund balance of nearly $608,000. And you can see how that goes across the increases or decreases in all those funds. One of the things that I always like to look at is that general fund balance of $5.8 million. First of all, keep in mind that's general, basic, general sup. Everything's kind of grouped. Anything that's general fund is put in there, but it's $5,825,000, and that sounds like a huge amount of money. If you stopped collecting revenue at June 30, 2018, that $5.8 million would last you 65 days. cost you just short of $90,000 a day to operate the county. Just the general operations of the county. That does not include rural services or secondary roads. That's just your general government. So, although $5.8 million general fund balance, again, sounds good. If you think about your revenue stream, you get a big property tax check on about October 15th. It's about 110 or 115 days out. So the 65-day fund balance is probably on the low side. I mean, it would be ideal, and we have this conversation every year, that it'd be ideal if you could increase that. I understand the budgets and that kind of stuff just doesn't really allow you to get too far. I have seen negatives in the general fund, so you're not anywhere near there. But I know that 5.8 million sounds like a lot of money, and it's just doesn't go very far. The other
What
major
percentage
funds-
is that? I'm sorry, what percentage is that as far as a reserve?
I did it in days, so it's what, 1/6.
'Cause our policy has a percentage, so I'm just wondering where we're.
That'd be 18%.
About 18, didn't you say, Dennis?
Right.
It's close to that, 17-18%.
It's not over 20%?
No.
Now, if you look at general basic, that's about 23%. If you look at general sub, that's maybe about 14%.
Okay.
Problem is, you're putting all these funds together, gaming revenues, all this is put together. So in general basic, we're in good shape, better than we could be. In general sub, we're a little less.
If you go to page 28, go backwards a couple pages, under that general fund balance, you'll see the restricted for supplemental levy. That's your general supplemental balance of $533,000, and your unassigned fund balance is $5.3 million. So that's the difference between the supplemental and the general basic. The other funds going across are the major funds, or those larger operating funds of the county: mental health, rural services, secondary roads, debt service, and then the county projects or capital project fund. You can see the big decrease there. That's not unusual. I mean, that's you'll either issue debt, which we've done in the past and had some unspent fund balance there, or you'll have capital projects that you're spending and waiting for the revenue to come in. So to see a big decrease there is not unusual. I don't see anything in the secondary roads. You see a large increase, about $1 million in fund balance. That also is not unusual, as that fund balance grows and then it's used for projects down the road. So nothing really jumped out at us that caused us any concerns this year. The next several pages are the footnotes to the financial statements. Gives us an opportunity in narrative form to kind of further explain that. And then, as I mentioned, if you turn to page 63, every fund of the county is listed someplace in here. And beginning on page 63 is where those smaller funds are at. And those, from page 63 to 70, those are funds of the county, and then beginning on page 71, those are the agency funds. Those are the funds of the other taxing bodies that you're handling their cash, the property taxes coming in and the payments going out. One of the requirements of the CAFR, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, is the statistical section and the 10-year trend information. There are a lot of numbers in there, but it really does give you a pretty good history of where we were 10 years ago compared to today. And so if you, again, if you're going to narrow down your reading, I think there's some pretty good information in that. And I would be one of very few people probably that go through every one of these in detail. There's just a lot of stuff in here. Page 113, 14, and 15 is the schedule of expenditure of federal awards. You expended $2.4 million of federal grant money this year. There's a requirement that if you spend more than $750,000, you have to be audited in accordance with what's called the Uniform Guidance. I mentioned that earlier. So we do test a significant amount of those dollars for compliance with those grants. So, and then we have our internal control and compliance reports and findings at the back of the report. I don't see A lot of significant differences in comments and findings are pretty similar. There was a pretty significant comment for a couple of years related to kind of the grants management, we have, the county has worked really hard to kind of improve those procedures, and we have modified that comment that hopefully will keep kind of some of the Fed guys a little bit. We're working hard to get better at that grant compliance, and Michelle and the group has worked really hard to do that. So, in general, I think you got to be pretty pleased. You're in pretty good shape from a financial standpoint. Nothing that jumped out at Chad and I, either one, that we really need to talk about. So, any questions?
So 2018-002, is that going to change with our Tyler software? Yes. Okay. Yeah, it will. It's
I'm bordering on retirement. That was one of my goals 20 years ago, that by the time I retired, you'd be down to one software. I think we're going to get there.
And then the unposted cash activity, it seems 2 instances. Is there a procedure going forward?
We're working on that. We've been meeting with the treasurer's office and making sure that there's some process and that gets that all covered. Some of that is turnover. I mean, you had some new faces up there the last couple of years, so they're working on it. Any questions?
So what is the motion to receive that?
Second.
That's fast when I got to read this and that. All right, so there's been a motion by Raddick, second by Taylor to receive the financial annual report. Any other questions? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate the opportunity to serve. Thanks.
Thank you.
I didn't mark it up. I've got mine out in the car.
All right, so moving on to 11A, the Community Economic and Development with David Gleiser. A, consideration of appointment to the Zoning Commission.
Evening Supervisors, David Gleiser, Community and Economic Development Director. We have a commissioner on the Woodbury County Zoning Commission whose term ends at the end of this month. Mr. Garvey is requesting to be reappointed for another 5-year term. And the opening for this position has been advertised publicly in our local print media for the last month and a half. We haven't had any other applications. I was leaving it open. It's the board's decision on reappointments to the Zoning Commission and the Board of Adjustment. And so I would make a recommendation that you make an appointment from the...
Is there a term limit on that, or?
2 5-year terms.
And has he?
This will be his second.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine.
I'll move the appointment of Mr. Garvey to the Zoning Commission.
I'll second that. So motion by Potabom, second by Raddick. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to consideration of appointment to the Board of Adjustment.
Same situation.
I move Katie Colling.
I'll second it. Motion by Taylor, second by Raddick. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to update on ACT Work Ready Community Certification.
This is a follow-up to a previous request that I've made to this board in regards to Woodbury County's efforts to become an ACT work-ready work-ready community. We have since achieved that certification and will become the first county in the state to receive this designation. On Friday, we will have an announcement in the courthouse rotunda with ACT officials, along with Governor Kim Reynolds and Director of Iowa Workforce Development, Beth Townsend. Our business community will be there, and just wanted to share the good news with the board. We issued a press release out to local media today, and we anticipate that it will be a well-attended event. As you know, this is something that we've been looking at or working on for almost a year now. I began discussions and having a dialogue with ACT officials since last spring, and I've worked closely with our regional Iowa Workforce Development Office to obtain the necessary criteria to become certified. We've attended 2 different ACT boot camp trainings, and basically now it's just time to celebrate and start promoting it with our local employers.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much for this, David. I just wanted to, if it's okay to piggyback off of, share with the board, had a TSI committee meeting, leadership meeting this morning, and I just thought it was dovetail nicely with your work. A couple statistics that they shared is Woodbury County has 1.9% unemployment, and this is what I thought was shocking. There's 44,905 unfilled jobs here, so over 44,000 unfilled Siouxland jobs, and only 2,486 individuals not working. So it's a great challenge to have, but it's also hard on those employers. And so just talked a little bit about future-ready cohorts. I know the school district, Western Iowa Tech, is seeking to fill that, but also looking at demographics over the next few years and how those are going the wrong direction. And I know the governor's $17.1 million program is to help community colleges to almost be completely incentivized to meet some of those low-skilled, middle-skilled workforce needs. But I think these things are a good thing, and appreciate your work on it.
You know, the Sioux City Community School District actually does a really good job. They're one of the main reasons why we've had such success in Woodbury County with getting such a high number of individuals to take the National Career Readiness Certificate. The school district assesses all incoming freshmen and all outgoing seniors. The nice thing about that is that they're able to use that as a measurement instrument to show progress that's from your freshman year to your senior year. And the nice thing about the outgoing seniors is that it's also a credential when you're leaving for full-time work in the local workforce. But it's also nice for freshmen who are just maybe looking for a part-time job and need to demonstrate something. They don't really have anything to put on their resume. So this gives them something to have. We would like to expand that implementation model throughout all the school districts in the county. And another focus of mine in our county plan is to work with our justice-involved populations and see if we can't develop some synergies and some opportunities in getting folks who may be re-entering our community to get this assessment done and to work with workforce on identifying how they can increase their scores or find what's the type of positions that are open. And we also want to use this instrument with the National Career Readiness Certificate to work with individual employers to develop a work profile based on their needs. So we can send someone to a company, have them shadow somebody that's going to be, we'll shadow somebody for a position that they're looking to fill, and then develop a profile based on that specific position. And so it's up to the company if they just want to hire only individuals with a certain achievement level within the Career Readiness Certificate. And it also demonstrates, it's a it's something that we can be doing to help our existing employers, but it's nice because it's also something that we can sort of market to prospective companies that may be looking at Woodbury County as a place to relocate. Because it is a nationally recognized program, it gives companies an apples to apples comparison. So they know that if they're looking for 5s and 6s for a specific position in another part of the country, that can transfer right over to here. In Woodbury County, we currently have roughly 8,700 individuals who have that certificate. And so it's nice for them to know that they have a pool to draw from and be able to look at our numbers to see exactly the types of skills our local workforce has. So, in an environment where everybody's struggling for workforce, it's just it's something that I believe that we all got to be involved in, and so this is something that the county's taken the lead on, and so I'm pretty pleased that we'll be the first in the state to achieve this.
Sounds like a good deal.
That's all I have.
So we'll all be there at Saturday at noon, right?
Friday at 10 o'clock.
Friday at 10 o'clock. The test.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to secondary roads with Mark Nara. Consider approval of a consultant agreement for the design of the Mason Avenue Bridge replacement.
The Mason Avenue Bridge was damaged during flooding on the Little Sioux River last year. It's an old truss dating back to 1915. The truss has a large bow in it now from taking a hit from a large tree. Rather than trying to repair and put in place a structure that is already 103 years old and in its best day can't carry a legal load of even gravel in a straight truck, we're working with FEMA to apply the repair money toward replacement of the structure. This site has some issues at it. We have road grade overflow present on both sides of the bridge. We can't put in a full flow bridge structure there because we would likely back water out onto Highway 31, which lays about 400 feet to the west of the stream and the bridge. We're looking at a custom designed bridge that would be a structure that would sit about the same deck height as the current structure, that would still pass the water and then retain the road grade overflows to maintain the same capacity that we have now for dealing with flood water down there. I'm recommending we use Calhoun Burns and Associates for this work. They've done this type of design work with basically taking our 150-foot continuous concrete slab bridge design and stretching out to 200 by adding an additional span. That's the structure that we've taken a look at as being the one to replace the existing structure. It's about a $50,000 project. It's going to require a lot of communication with the DNR and with CBA being right there in the Des Moines area. That'll help keep that project moving forward. We have a June deadline to get some a mitigation proposal in place. We're starting to see some movement of the stream toward the east. We're looking to get some FEMA participation in maintaining the current channel where it's at so that it hits the new bridge, which is going to be placed where the old bridge was. So we're on a tight timetable to get this project rolling.
I'd move it.
Second.
All right, motion by Taylor, second by DeWitt. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to the Board of Supervisors, Jeremy Taylor, update regarding Rolling Hills Region action on the FY20 budget, core services, strategic planning meeting, and remodeling of the Friendship House.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. You have some backup materials, and I won't belabor them, but wanted to let you know that during the last Rolling Hills meeting Dennis and I attended, that they kept the per capita target at 3363. Now, it's important to remember that that is not what we're in turn levying per capita. So what I mean by that is if you take 3363 times our new population, which is 102,429, then you'll come up with the budget number there, which is $3,444,687. And so a portion of that will be paid through from our ending fund balance, which we're anticipating coming over, and then what we're levying, and Dawn Metzer will be joining us to go through the budget. So the previous items that I let you know on the core services, there's about $323,000 that we are going to look at for new core services. And you'll see minutes from a strategic planning meeting where Terry Johnson from Genesis Development had quite a good turnout with Woodbury County providers. They were very appreciative that our sheriff's personnel and deputies were there as well. And you can see all of those whom were present. And the goal is, adding those crisis services from 2456. And you'll see the crisis stabilization. As you know, we have that available in Sac City and in Sioux City. And so you really have two different population centers, right? You have 7 counties with approximately just under 100,000, and you have our county with just over 100,000. So going forward, the discussion is whether there will still be 2 crisis and stabilization centers, and I know Supervisors Ung and Radig had that discussion. You could probably piggyback off of today at Sioux Rivers, where I think that the stars are aligning and that there's some good cooperation as they're doing what's in their best interest and we're doing ours, but maybe that has a good symbiotic relationship. 23-hour observation, the availability in Sioux City. It's not available centrally located to all counties, but there's some opportunities there as well. And then I would just highlight another couple on here, the access centers, which is currently not available in the region. That's something that's going to be mandated to have. And there's cursory discussions potentially even in Cherokee, which is close to us, but is a little more central to those eastern counties. The discussion on access centers is kind of twofold by a lot of CEOs. One is, do you have a brick and mortar structure that people are walking into and they're getting face-to-face personal interaction? Or is this sort of a virtual, not a kiosk, but is this, all done kind of remotely? Right. And then, some sort of electronic means, does that cut it? And I think Dawn's position would be that it needs to be a brick and mortar. You need that face-to-face interaction with people who are trying to navigate what services are most appropriate. And then the other one I'd highlight is mobile response, and kind of give you an update on that before. This is where law enforcement would be accompanied by a team from, most likely from the crisis center, those folks who are engaged, and then they would go out to the homes of those who, or the places of work or wherever that person's in crisis. The deflection rate is much greater. And when I say deflection rate, from going into the emergency room and being hospitalized when you have mobile response. Because when law enforcement's there, typically they're going to err on the side of, we're just going to drive them up to and transport them to the hospital. So that's a component that Plains area has already offered over in using their crisis personnel. And so they're willing to work, it sounds like, with Siouxland Mental Health on some intellectual capital best practices and so on. And so you can see some of that discussion on mobile response access centers and intensive residential service homes and so on. That's kind of an overview of that. They're going to meet with Siouxland paramedics regarding mobile response and assess interest there. Talk with the advisory board about a next meeting. And so that's kind of the budget and some services. And then we also talked with them about approximately $100,000 for the Friendship House. They were very receptive to that. My goal was that we would still stay within our budget of the 3363, There's some opportunities within that budget where we see some cost efficiencies, perhaps in personnel and restructuring there that we want to stick within that budget for taxpayer purposes. But at the same time, they were very willing to understand what the Friendship House has gone through, from the original to the modified to the nothing at all, to their present needs. So we really feel like this is appreciated. It is within our budget, but just kind of wanted to, sorry for being long-winded and it rarely happens, but wanted to give you a little bit of an overview because I thought it was an important meeting. Any questions?
No, but as a follow-up, we did discuss the 75-25 split for a year in Sioux Rivers today, and that was approved. So,
Great.
of course, it hasn't been approved in the final budget there yet, but it's the first time we've had budget discussions before the budget, so that was a plus.
They'd be the contract holder,
Yeah.
sounds like? Okay.
All right. Any other questions for Jeremy on that? Okay, we'll move on to reports on committee meetings. So let's just start with you, Jeremy.
That's pretty much it. The only other thing from TSI today,
What was those numbers again there? You said 1.9%. How many people?
yeah, so 1.9% unemployment, 44,905 unfilled Siouxland jobs with 2,400 some odd individuals not working. That number is going to double. That's a scary thing. The number of those unfilled jobs. We're going to have fewer workers in the next 10 years, just based on, you know, the changing and moving demographics of those who are 16 to 69 years old. And so it's just going to get worse. And I think that's why they're trying to be proactive with things like incentivizing. Cherokee County has something called the Cherokee County Promise. And they went out and raised about $450,000 private dollars. And what they said is this: if you go to community college here for 2 years, and then you make a commitment to live here for 3 years, we'll help to pay for the cost of your community college education. And their goal is, you know, so many of us grow up and then we have to get out and see the bright lights of the big city. You know, we have to go elsewhere, right? Some of us return, but that's kind of, you know, how they're trying to bridge that gap, and with also the WIT portion. The other one is TSI was hosting IEDA Director Debbie Durham. As you may know, she's now also the Director of Iowa Finance Authority, stayed on. And she's very interested in discussions related to economic development, land acquisition. The Chamber's really rolling up sleeves right now, or TSI, on regional wastewater, huge issue. And looking for all communities to kind of be a player, and then possibly even the idea of land acquisition, you'll think maybe mega site, those sort of things in the future. So kind of an update.
Sounds good. Yeah, the regional wastewater had been discussed in Simcoe as well. So that is something that's on the horizon. Obviously, you know, Sergeant Bluff's very concerned. There's other, South Sioux's very concerned. So it's been talked about before, but we're kind of reaching to the point where we're running out of capacity in a brand new $100 million rebuilt facility, I guess you'd call it. So, Matthew, anything for?
Attended, of course, Sioux Rivers with Supervisor Radig. The election of the chair was held. It stays the same. It's Plymouth County Supervisor Mark Luch. There was just good discussion of the 75-25 split, talks of a good meeting, and so I don't think there'll be any issues with that. There was also discussion about Woodbury County's service coordinator, and the CEO made mention that they will, the ball is basically in Woodbury County's court, and they'll respect our decision there. Anything you want to add?
So it was brought up that, was it Teresa Yoakum, right? Is that the name? She's currently a Sioux County employee. She would like to return as a Woodbury County employee. They would like to have her be the acting service coordinator, so to speak, for for at least the end of till June 30th. Because technically we still have a service coordinator as Woodbury County, although the person's on leave. They would like obviously somebody to be doing that job and have it essentially be their job description. And because this is a regional employee, as far as the pay goes, I think the pay would stay the same, and we just move them to Woodbury County employment. So really, that's more for Melissa to do. You know, we would have to take her on as I guess we'd have to create the position as a board and then fill that position.
I think that would come back.
Just trying to think, is it where we have to like post that position, is that what you just said?
No, I think we'd have to come back before the board, our board, in order to make her a Woodbury County employee on a memorandum.
Yeah, we would have to make her an employee here.
Where is she?
Is it no, Sioux County?
Sioux County, yep.
My understanding was that they would not seek to backfill that position,
Right, they're not going to backfill her position.
right? So my question is, who's paying currently for that Sioux County position?
It's a regional expense. Her employment's just under Sioux County.
And so if there was no additional compensation, that would really be a wash.
Just move her pay from Sioux County to Woodbury County. Out of Fund 110, but it's all regional money.
So it'd be cost neutral, essentially,
To the rate.
Well,
Yeah, they're not backfilling the open position.
I think there needs to be a discussion whether that would be at the same pay rate, because
Well, as far as I'm concerned, if she's already technically been doing that job, I think it is the same pay rate, but, I mean, we set the pay rate for any position, do we not? So I guess if you can get with who you need to from Sioux County or Shane Walter or whatever, and we can work this out. Week or two, whatever.
But that wouldn't have to be posted or anything, would it?
It's kind of like a transfer of employment, really.
From one county to the other, I'm just curious how our rules apply to that.
No,
Okay.
that's true.
Okay.
So, anything else you got on that? Any other committees? I'll go to Marty.
Nothing.
Rocky, all right. Let's see, I did have a SHIP meeting, a lot of discussion on basically planning and getting the board more involved in different things. So that was about it for that. That's about my only meeting I had. Move on to, well, citizen concerns. I don't know if the media's got any pressing questions. Sorry. Board concerns, Jeremy?
I just think it's great news and commendable to be work on Sioux Rivers, and then also Sioux and Plymouth County. It just seems like maybe it's nice to see everybody's working cooperatively, and I just think that's a good thing. You know,
I think now that there's a lot of pressure relieved now that they have a third member, so that I think brings the wall down. Matthew? Anyone else? Okay, I did have another concern brought up to me on moving forward with the Rolling Hills region. An individual asked me if there would be any provider committee or way to, for Woodbury County providers now that it's further away. would they be able to access us as a board to address concerns? And I had mentioned that there's already a requirement under state code that there is a committee with providers and a citizen. Yeah, it does. But I said I would bring it up, and that I thought that it was already covered, but and any provider that has any concern can obviously come to us. They've done that in the past anyway, so. But
I think one thing that Dawn Wintzer's proven is that she's very, very successful from meeting with every provider here in the community, and then being here, I would say almost weekly. We're not that's a little bit of a drive, but she's made time to do it, so I would say reaching out to her and or wanting to sit on, if they're willing to sit on an advisory committee, that'd be great. We're willing to hear any concerns as well.
Well, not only her, but 2 members of the Rolling Hills Board were there today as well, including the chair.
sounds good. No other concerns. We are adjourned. Dennis, I do have a question for you.